In this video, I'd like to talk about selections in Solidworks. We already know that you can select items from the assembly manager or the feature manager and expand features and sketches, individual parts, and you can also use feature manager filter to find items in the assembly or feature manager. You can also select on an edge or a face in a part, and we know that you can right click on a part and use the select other to select things that are in the background or that you can't select from the current point of view. For example, here we can select a face from inside the part or the part itself. If we switch over to the part window and you right click on it to get the select other, now you can just get the face on the other side. And if we take a look at what the other side is, it's shelled out in a hollow part. Also, if you right click on an edge, you can select tangency, and it will select all the edges as long as they are tangent. You can do the same on a face, right click and select tangency. It will select again all of the faces that are tangent. So anything that's connected by a fillet will be selected. There are a couple of faces here that have hard edges, and those aren't selected. There's another option, right click and select loop. This isn't getting the complete graphic right away. So if we cycle through this yellow arrow allows us to select the loop to one side of the edge or to the other side of the edge. And on a solid model, every edge is going to have two loops. If you make a box, you're going to select all of the edges within that box, and you can use the selection filter. This is F5. Usually comes up at the bottom, but it can show up in other places. Some of these selections have hotkeys. Filter vertices is V, filter edges is E, filter faces is X. You can make some of your own if you use the selection filter quite often. Hotkeys, especially within sketches, can be very effective. And the invert selection option is also overlooked quite often. Some of these selection options you can also find under Tools, Selection, the regular select. You've got magnified selection, which uses the G hotkey. If you press G, you get the magnifier, and you can zoom in and out, and you can also rotate the model while you're in this mode. The box selection and lasso selection. Lasso selection is like the box selection, except you just drag a freehand area to select items within. If we switch over to a multi-body part, and this also works in assemblies, you can put your mouse over a component or a body and hit tab, and that part will disappear. You can see it's been hidden in the display pane. If we put our mouse back here and shift tab, we get that part back. So let's flip over to an assembly and try the same thing. Tab and shift tab. This doesn't have anything to do directly with selection, but it can make selections easier if you're selecting internal parts to hide some of the external parts. Well, let's turn off the selection filter and we can go back to the Tools Selection menu. The Select over Geometry allows you to start a lasso or to drag a selection box even if you can't start your selection over a blank part of the screen. So what that means is if I wanted to start a lasso selection in here, I can't do that, right? I have to start out in blank space. But if you press T or use the Select over Geometry, then you can start a lasso over geometry, essentially. So this Tools Selection, Select over Geometry is a very useful tool. Select All is a famously important tool, and in conjunction with the selection filter, it can be an extremely powerful tool as well. Invert Selection, again, sometimes it's easy to select things that you don't want and then invert the selection to get what you do want. So let's just select a face on here. Tools, selection, invert selection, and it selects everything else. And again, in conjunction with the selection filter, this can be, again, a very powerful tool. Another selection tool that you'll find in the selection menu is the Power Select. Power Select allows you to work kind of like you would with the selection filter, but it has some additional filters and parameters that you can use. Just as a hint, when you use the Power Select and you want to get out of this, you're going to need to press the Cancel button. There's no other way to get rid of that tool and get access to the rest of the interface. Something else you're going to want to use is called Save Selections. So if you click on an edge, right-click, go to Selection Tools, you can save the selection, create a new selection set, and you'll get a folder in your Feature Manager called Selection Sets. You can rename these just like you rename other types of features. And then within this selection set, you can see exactly what's selected. This kind of thing is important in several instances. If you're making a lot of features that have similar selections, then you can invoke a selection set. If you're making a feature that fails and you have to keep going back and adjusting things and then reselecting all of those edges or faces or whatever again, then a selection set would be a good idea for that as well. And another thing that you need to keep in mind is that if you have a selection set as part of a part, you can access that selection set in the assembly. So if we open this part, right-click, select tangency, and maybe select a couple of tangencies here. And then we can right-click, Selection Tools, Save Selection to New Selection Set, and we'll rename this to be Mat 1. Okay, then we flip back to the assembly. Take a look at this part. We can see that we have a selection set in here called Mat 1. We can also create a selection set in the assembly, and maybe we've got edges or maybe even faces from multiple components. Right-click, Save Selection. The interface isn't very consistent here. New Selection, and we'll call this one something different. There are also some options that you can select in a surface. And if I use this sketch, I can create a planar surface. I could also use the sketch to create an extruded surface. Make it go this way. And use F8 to access the display pane. I can hide the solid body and change the color of the two surface bodies. We'll make those yellow. Now, one of the things that you'll notice about a surface body in SolidWorks is that the open edges are blue. You'll notice that the planar surface body and the extruded surface body are right next to each other, but they aren't joined together. So if you use the Surface Knit tool, you can take the planar surface and the extruded surface, knit them together, and now the edge between them is black. It's no longer an open surface, but if you look at the top edge, this is an open surface. One of the options for selection on surfaces is if you right-click, you can select the midpoint, select tangency. You can also select open tangency. Other options include select loop, which we've seen before, and one that we haven't seen before is to select the open loop. Notice that we didn't get the option to select one of two loops on a surface. That's because an open edge on a surface only has one natural loop, and that's this bottom rectangular surface. The open loop is a separate loop, so it's not treated the same way as solids. Another one that's not commonly used is the partial loop. If you click on this end of this edge and control right click on this end of this edge, you can select the partial loop. If we select over here and control right click over here, the partial loop will go the other way. That's just another selection option that's available to you. The selection tools are going to look mostly the same here, but these are the basic selection tools that you can use frequently in SolidWorks, parts, and assemblies. I'm sure I've forgotten a couple of options, and if you remember one that I've forgotten, please leave me a comment. Thanks for watching.